Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Harry Bull, how's it going, everybody? Good evening, or space time, you know. Have a wonderful now. This is Nowl. Good to see you again. It's been a minute.
What's up, Andreas, my man?
Man, there's a W in my thing. I'm making an E for you just so everyone's got it right. But
You're good, bro. It's okay.
Cool.
That's like an initiated name.
That's more fun.
It's fine. Either one's fine. Don't change anything.
All right. Well, don't go changing to try to please me. But this is my buddy Nowl, and I've known him for a long time. We wanted to make videos about the Veda. We've actually done some stuff. You've seen him on Think Tank probably a few times talking about the history of the Veda. And he's like, I got to talk about it, but I got to wait, right? You've been saying you wanted to finish because you were working on a study, like for school, academically.
Yeah, I finished my master's program, which was, it's a theology MA. So it's academic. It's a unique program in Berkeley, the Graduate Theological Union. And I also cross-enrolled in Cal, UC Berkeley. Actually, most of my classes are at Cal in Sanskrit. So I took like 3 years of Sanskrit at Cal and studied with private tutors for a couple of years.
This rats. You were at Cal studying in California University, the pseudo-dead but kind of alive Sanskrit language of the god, Samskrit. That's from ancient India, basically. And what were you studying?
Well, no, I was studying grammar, but there's different types of Sanskrit. So, I had to learn like my basic grammar, and I studied what's called Shastriya type Sanskrit, means a Sanskrit which is technical. That's used for like commentaries in philosophy, and I studied epic genre Sanskrit, so Sanskrit for like narrative theology, like the epics, like.
So they're different. They're different though. Yeah. The technical Sanskrit's like versus the theaters like Shakespearean or.
Yeah, I studied that too. So then the third type of Sanskrit, exactly. Yeah, kavya is the poetic Sanskrit, so like double meanings and like ornaments of sound, ornaments of meaning. Bent speech, so to speak, vakrukti, and all those kinds of things.
And so these will have their different strengths. I guess you would use one for kind of rap music, kind of like rhyming and interesting things about sound, but the other you might use for technical. What would you do with some of the technical Sanskrit? What was the use of that?
It's like philosophy, like when you want to be precise, like if you have so a lot of the Sanskrit like primary stuff is in verse, so it's in meters. There's so many types of meter, that have different amounts of syllables and different weighted syllables. And then technical Sanskrit is prose, but it's so like when something's in poetry, it's meant to be somewhat loose or nebulous so that it can contain more and more meaning. But when you want to get specific and start making different types of distinctions, you do that in the prose. So poetry is very useful for conveying ideas about the divine. So a lot of the primary, like the Veda, is all in meter.
Right. So that's the question also. So the mythology or the stories of the gods, that's more poetic, the way it's written.
Yeah, but even
in the context.
Right. But for example, like the epic genre of Sanskrit is like, it's also in meter, but they use certain types of meters, like Anushtubh, where it'll be like 2 lines of 16. So that's like the most common, because when you have to write out like thousands of verses, you're not going to be like usually using like so many different types of meter. Like they'll throw in a couple meters to like emphasize a point. Like there's, I give you an example. So like most of the verses you'll see in Sanskrit epics are like in what's called Anushtubh or Shloka, and it'll sound something like this: Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Rano Rame Sahasranama Tatulyam Rama Nama Varanane. So that's like, and it'll just keep going like that for like thousands of verses. But then every once in a while, you'll see verses that are like a little bit, have a different style, like ho hi vishvasya jaracharasya, so like and that's called like a kshatriya meter, or like a warrior type meter, and it usually indicates something important is going to be said here. So meters can emphasize different things. They have different names. Like some of like the more like very grand meters, like Shardula Vikritita, means like the play of the tiger, are like bombastic, like Janmadasyan Natunvarit Rascharti Shabigyaswarat Tene Brahma Hida Yadikavaye Buyantiat Surayaha Tejo Varimidam Yatavinimayo Yatra Tri Sargam Shah Damna Svena Sada Nirastakukam Satyam Param Dhimahi So like these are like like massive meters with like so many syllables. But yeah, like that's like it's got like everything in those like big heavy verses, you know. So it's like they use different.
But they're used them for different reasons. Like different
Yeah.
people, especially, would say them if they're soldiers. They might say one kind of one if they're a priest or some kind of prince kid. They might be singing another one that's more soft or something.
Yeah, there's different parts of the Veda. They have different, like the Sama Veda is like more like slow and like these long drawn out mantras, whereas like different parts in the Rig Veda are like we'll also use like those short mantras like shloka and stuff like that.
And so, you know, basically you've got all this written Sanskrit, but it's all from musical history, right? A lot of this is written down from people who've been repeating it already.
Right. So there's like bards, right? So like the epic, for example, like epic genre Sanskrit, the bards or the suttas are like giving, basically it's like representative of the oral tradition. So oral by I mean like ORAL, like spoken tradition. There's textual tradition, there's oral tradition, and they also blend together. There's also like ritual tradition and stuff like that. So when you go like older and older, like you try to go back into like like the far reaches of our human memory, like when like very early, what we call early, we just don't know what's before it. Like early examples of the Proto-Indo-European language groups, which is called PIE. You know, Sanskrit is like one of the most complete examples of that. Perhaps some people argue like the oldest like surviving example. You know, whereas like I would myself be really interested to learn more about like cuneiform in Babylonian and Egyptian, but my what I know is just based in the, you know, Indo European, especially Sanskrit. That's my wheelhouse of knowledge, but I don't claim to know anything outside of that. But I would like to know more about those things. I would love, that would be really cool. Maybe sometime if you could get like a hieroglyphic scholar and like a cuneiform scholar on, I'd be super stoked.
We've had a couple, and then we also had some that get like really upset about cuneiform. It's like, well, they didn't know what it said till the 1930s, and the 1890s started making things up. So a lot of people they're very argumentative about what is really there in the cuneiform tablets, but some Turkologists. But yeah, we did look into that. But I mean, in terms of in the Indo-Aryan kingdom or how old, so Sanskrit, you're saying this is like directly tied to the Veda? Is it a Hindu language? Was it spoken by Hindus originally, or how old is Sanskrit and where does it come from?
I don't think we quite know how old it is. You know, it's very hard to know what was going on 5,000 years ago, as much as we would like to know these things.
But as we go back, it seems that Sanskrit seems to be there, kind of a thing.
I'll give you an example that there was a researcher did work on the Saraswati River, and there's these phrases in the Veda which talk about Saraswati as the giver of floods. You know, it's like, well, they've looked at all of the possible sites for the Saraswati. So the Saraswati River it's partially an extinct river at this point. So like the archaeologists, when they go and dig and they, you know, with their geologists, you know, teammates, and they try to figure out like, where was this river basin, or like when was this place flooding? It's like, that wasn't even happening until like that stopped like 7,000 years ago, or, you know, or maybe 9,000. It's like, how old is this poetry? We just don't know, but some of it is very old. It's very old, and it's hard to know.
It's hard to know because also some of our historical events, maybe this is showing, happened more recently than we think. Because sometimes we're thinking things took 7,000 years when they might have happened over the last 1,000 or 2,000 years as well. So we're really damned by our own historical record as well. Right.
And there's also we should remain somewhat flexible and open-minded before we put the critical lenses on and start to, you know, reject things. You know, I don't think we should just reject things like rapidly offhand because we have some like pet academic pedagogical tradition that, you know, we have to toe the line of our ancestor professors and whatnot.
Well, yeah. Okay. So then looking at the Veda, or is that something that you want to, you know, like looking at the Veda, what is the history of, do you have kind of a idea of like a cosmogony or cosmology of the world from the Vedic perspective, or where do you want to start?
Oh, where would I like to start? Well, we just talked about some of like the old, it's kind of more like academic discourse there, but my interest is more in like the ideas. I know people, you know, like archaeologists, anthropologists, and sociologists want to talk about what grandma's doing early in the morning before, you know, her chores, you know, like what kind of spiritual practices she do before chores. But like if you try to bring up what grandma actually thinks, or like what intellectuals of the tradition actually think, they're like, oh no, that's theology, like get that away from me, that's religion. And it's like, we're gonna, so, you know, part of removing the spiritual dynamic from the academic discourse is to denigrate the intellectual tradition of the discourse, right? So if you can say that these intellectuals are just doing theology and we're not going to do that, then you're basically allowed to just ignore whatever the people of history thought. And I feel like that's highly inappropriate. So moving from there, I'm actually more interested in what did people actually think, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm of course I'm going to be interested in what did they prescribe. Now, although I think our discourse here is going to be more descriptive than prescriptive. I'm not here to like tell people, you know, how to practice religion, you know. But I think there are some. I think it's totally worthwhile to look at what people think, right?
It's interesting to know how our society was shaped by which choices were made because of what beliefs, because of which beliefs, right? So
Right.
those choices matter and the reasoning.
Yeah, completely. So I think this discourse will, at least we can talk about anything you want to talk about, Andres. But I would also like to talk about the ideas, and I think you're of the same mind.
Yeah.
The same mind on that. So I guess just like for people who have heard of the Veda but don't really know what the Veda is, the Veda there's like 4 books of the Veda. This is like the ancient texts of India. Academics say it was like nomads, you know, in like the Central Asian area who were migrating around. You know, they had horses, there were kings, there were like shamanic type persons called like Brahmins, who also were like ritual technical experts, and they were also bards, and there's just all kind of people mixing around them. But the Vedas basically have 4. Each Veda has like 4 sections. The first one, which is called the Samhita, which are like the songs, are basically a corpus of mantras. So that's like you know, when people mention the Veda, they're usually referring to this, the first section of the Veda, or the mantras. And there's like, in this section of the Veda, there is philosophy, there is theology, there is cosmology, there is all of these things, but it's more mystical, right? So I think a good example of a place to start would be, could you pull up like Wikipedia and like go to like the Naasadiya Suktam? So it's Nasadiya. It means like the hymn of non-existence. So it's like an affirmative hymn, but you can see that it's mystical.
By the way, you ever notice that there's not a lot of Sanskrit spelling bees because it just all spells pretty easy? You know, it's exactly how it sounds. All right.
Yeah. So here, go down, get to the actual hymn itself. Let's look at this thing because it's actually okay. There's the Sanskrit. I need the Sanskrit. There we go. Good. So you see, like in the first thing, Naasad, Asino, Sad, Asi, Tadanim. You see, like, here, go up a little bit so I can see the English here. This is Basham's translation. There's a problem in this translation, by the way. Then even non-existence was not there, nor existence. This is like basically one of the oldest creation myths that we have, or stories that we have, or legends that we have. So it's saying in the beginning, it's taking the skeptical. It's very interesting. So right from the beginning, you have a skeptical position, and it's saying there was not non-existence nor existence, right? And then there was no air, there was no space. What covered it? What was it? In whose keeping? Was there then cosmic fluid in the depths unfathomed? There was neither death nor immortality, nor was there torch of night and day. The one breathed windlessly, self-sustaining. There was the one then, and there was no other. So, you know, you might see some parallels in, you know, Abrahamic ideas. But I would just like to point to this. There was neither existence nor non-existence. It starts with like this skepticism, and it has a bunch of interrogatives. So it's like a bunch of questions, right? Or like doubt, like there was neither this nor that. But then you'll start to see as you go through this that there are some things left unnegated. So an interesting theory, when you talk about the beginning, it says at first there was only darkness wrapped in darkness, right? So there are things that are being said. It's not really negated. They're actually positive assertions here, even if they're sort of apophatic. Apophatic means statement by what it is not, like by denying, by like reducing the amount of qualities it has, or denying certain categories. It's defining the thing. In apophatic theology, you have, like you're going to define God by what God cannot be described as. Like he is neither big nor small, right? Neither rich nor poor. These things do not apply, right? So in here it says, in the beginning, kamas tad agre sum avartatadi, that in the beginning desire descended on it. That was the primal seed born of the mind. Here's where the mistake comes in the translation. Manaso reta pratamam yad asit. So here, this is why it's so difficult to get at ideas, because this was translated by a guy named A.L. Basham, and he is clearly influenced by like neo-Kant. He's like a Kantian, clearly, because for him, the idea that desire comes before the mind is like too much, So he wants to say that there's the mind, then there's desire. So he gives primacy to rationality. It's fairly typical for like Enlightenment thinking, but the funny thing is like
post-Calvinist thinking.
Yeah, the funny thing is here though is that like he's on like the tail end of it, so he didn't even like move on. Like he doesn't like see what's coming, with the current day, and he's still like rationality is supreme.
Still old school Brit.
Yeah, he's totally Kantian, right, for sure.
Brutal. I don't know, Kantian, but maybe just also British. He's got that very, kind of if you're suffering, it's because God has intended you to suffer, and so that kind of Confucianistic dharma from the West, I think the British saw India and the caste system as social Darwinism and spiritual transcendental Darwinism.
Well, I mean, the British had a lot to do with creating the caste system. Actually, the word caste comes from the Portuguese casta. And there was a census. I actually don't want to go too far into this because this is we spent a whole episode talking about like Indian independence and like modernity and like
But the fact remains it's a Portuguese tradition, right?
Right. Yeah, you got like mulattoes and
mestizos, exactly.
Albinos, mosquitoes, and libidos, right?
You've got a pyramid of
you're like mixed. You're either like part Spaniard or you're part indigenous.
And the most indigenous is at the very bottom, right?
Right. You're like it. So yeah, the caste is. I think you're right. It does very much reflect the hierarchy of the British society, and therefore it's very British. That's
brutal. So again, you're saying his connection or his disconnection between being in existence and desires, or what is the operative here? Desire and
he can't see. He's got those glasses on, so he can't actually see that Kama. Like Kama Sutra, right? Kama desire. Kama Sutra is like the text of like desire. Like
I gotta be careful looking this up.
Don't get. Just don't. You're gonna get like you're gonna
etymology. Anything about etymology? This is the safest website about the Kama Sutra I've ever seen.
I'll show you dirty cartoons from the Mughal period. Kama. Yeah, kam comes from the root kam, just means to desire. It includes eroticism, but it also surpasses eroticism. But in here in the Veda, because it's so old, you see this is a very old. It's a very old. I mean, this is extraordinarily old writing. So so in the beginning is desire. That's very interesting. So this is like the first like really unnegated thing, and the desire becomes the seed of the mind, right? So these things play out. So just returning to like the first line, in the beginning there's neither existence nor non-existence. You can see this is where Buddhism comes from too, because the Buddhism actually, like their philosophy is essentially, I'm not a Buddhist, but I can say this much. They have something called a four-cornered negation, or chatuskoti, which is essentially that they say, that Dharma, like the truth is neither being nor non-being, nor both, nor neither. And it comes back here to the Veda. So you can see in the first line in the Na-Asadiya Sukta. But the funny thing is, the Na-Asadiya Sukta means Na-Asad. Asad means not existence, and not non-existent, right? So that means existent, right? So it's not. Some people could argue with that, like it's very pedantic, but I would say it's negating non-existence, essentially. And then let's go down to the bottom of this. There's only a seven here. Everybody can read this on their own if they want. So it's interesting how it ends. Whence all creation had its origin, the creator, whether he fashioned it or whether he did not, the creator who surveys it all from the highest heaven, he knows, or maybe even he does not know. It's very cool, huh? It's like, wait, what?
Because he's God, right? Because God's all powerful. God's capable of all things. If God was incapable of not knowing, then God would be impotent in some way.
Exactly,
lacking that capacity, right?
So yeah, like what? Yeah, that's what I've always been trying to wonder. I've never found anybody able to like really explain this to me. Like, how come you always have to argue from necessary conditions? Like, okay, God has to exist necessarily because of like some other condition, like why not just say that because he's omnipotent, he can be irrational? Like,
right.
What if irrationality is like superior or something?
The rationality of the position of omnipotence is that you can do whatever you want, even if it breaks all the rules. It's kind of what's this,
like a divine madness or something.
Yeah, Dick Cheney had that power, right? I forget what that's called
now. Okay. Yeah. So this is a good place to start from understanding like Dharma. I think essentially instead of like, so, everybody uses the word Hindu, and that boat has sailed. We're not going to be able to get rid of the word, but essentially it's
unitary
Dharma.
executive
Dharma.
theory. That's what it is.
What is it?
Unitary executive theory.
Unitary executive.
The president cannot break the law because the president cannot break the law. So if the president breaks the law, then they must have been doing something else by definition.
Well, in Krishna, then Krishna is all about breaking the law in a way that's good. So how to break the law in a way that benefits everyone. This is interesting. So if you want to understand Dharma, like sometimes some Hindus want to refer to themselves as Sanatana Dharma, like eternal Dharma, or I think they could just call themselves as like Dharma, like followers of Dharma, as like the Buddhists have done. So Dharma, Buddhists say, we're followers of Dharma, but then, Dharma is a very old Vedic trope. So, I mean, I think it's the same thing with like Jesus, right? He saw himself as a Jew, and like the Buddha is probably seeing himself as a follower of Dharma, but he's like a reformer. He wants to clarify things.
So what is Dharma?
That's a very difficult question. So there's so many people who define it. So, okay, before we get into that, so like, there's different ways of looking at an idea, right? Like you can track it historically, right? So that's called a diachronic reading of a tradition, right? Where you're like, the tradition started like this and it ended like this, and these are all the things in between. Then there's like a synchronic reading, right? So you're reading like the tradition as a whole. So in every single verse, you're reading the entirety of the tradition. And that's actually what most people do by nature. By default, they read synchronically. Diachronic is more like the preserve of scholars. So but I just wanted to bring up this kind of diachronic thing in the beginning, like diachronic, like two poles, right?
There's this and there's them, yeah.
You're coming across time, like from early to later. There's so many fallacies that have to deal with this. But anyway, so I wanted to point that out about Dharma. So, and then this is part of, that's like an example of a hymn, right? So it's kind of mystical, but it's also philosophical in some ways, right? It asks more questions than it answers, right? So that would be like an example of a mantra from the first part of the Veda. There's also, and all of the Vedic mantras have like, they usually have a deity or a deva. They have a meter, like Gayatri or Anushtubh. They have a Viniyoga, or like a purpose, right? Like, is this purpose to get something, or is, the purpose to kill your enemy or something? There's like, the Vedas are kind of like magic, essentially. It's like early, so like mantras would be employed or like weaponized, like they're very life affirming, like give me villages, destroy my enemies, like give me
win the lottery.
Rains, let the rains come today, oh Lord Indra. They're like very like, worldly in that sense, right? So, and then this is in the mantras, right? And the second part of the Veda is called the Brahmanas. And the Brahmanas contain some of the earliest mythologies that we have. But they also tell us how to use the mantras. And this is like the preserve really of people who are born Brahmin, because it's not possible to possibly, like they have to memorize like 100,000 lines of verse. Like, unless you start that when you're like 4, it's just not happening. So like there, and these people almost don't exist anymore. There's like almost no Brahmanas left who are like Chaturvedi, who like know the 4 Vedas. It's just like, you're talking like somebody who's got like an excellent memory. Yeah. So So yeah, they have to. So the Brahmanas tell you, like, they're kind of like procedural. They tell you like how to employ the mantras. This is the most probably least known part of the Veda, the Brahmanas, because it's, like I said, the preserve of people who have that craft since their birth. And it's basically almost, you could just say it has died, unfortunately. There's a couple people here and there, isolated pockets, and a lot of scholars are interested in trying to save what's left of it. But so a lot of this stuff, the point I'm making here is we don't know how old this stuff is. And I'm going to say something controversial here, because I know people will be like, the Brahmanas, they're on the top of the hierarchy. This is controversial. Go ahead and crucify me for saying it. They are the most persecuted person in the caste system, the British created caste system, largely because they're the custodian of the culture, and the way to break the culture is to break its custodian. And they're also, I don't find really anywhere in the text where they're like rich. They're always poor.
Yeah.
So where's their power? And they're also not like, they're not organized like the Catholic Church was, or like the Holy Roman Empire. It's not like there's some network of Brahmanas who are literate and the kings are illiterate, and so like the whole kingdom's being run by these like literati. That wasn't there. And also they weren't miserly with their knowledge. They were teaching everybody. Like if you read the Ramayana, it says if a Shudra reads the Ramayana, he gets, Shudra means like your worker class. If he reads the Ramayana, he gets XYZ benefits. It's like, wait a minute, that means the Shudras know Sanskrit. It's like, well, who taught it to them? That means they were able to. There's no, so much British have really told some dirty lies. But yeah, I want to kind of pull back from that, because since we got into the Brahmin thing, I was just pointing out that in order to actually know the Vedas and like recite them, you would have to start really early. There are some people, Westerners, who have tried, or even successfully, but you're talking like a handful, and they've gone to these Brahmin communities in like South India and like memorized the whole Veda and stuff. But like it's just a handful of people. So yeah, it's interesting. So the Vedas are really complex in that way. The mantras, mantra comes from mana trayate. Manas means the mind, trayate means to cross the mind. So use a mantra, you're weaponizing sound over the mind, right? So that's where mantras come from. Maybe you're familiar with Om. You've heard of Om? Mm-hmm. Like Om, like at the end of like Natural Born Killers, like Robert Downey Jr. is like, oh, the birds fly.
What's up with Om?
Om, it's a seed. It's called bija. So it's the seed of the Vedas. It's like the compressed form of like all knowledge. So people have analyzed it in different ways. But yeah, the Vedas, it says that originally, at least according to the mythology, the Om is like the original Veda. And by meditation on the Om, the deity Brahma divided the Veda into 3 parts, right? And then the 4th part came, the Atharva, which is basically, magic.
This is interesting. Om and Tamil with the Trishula.
Yeah, that's cool. You also see those little heads there. I've always been curious about them. It's actually called, see that little like thing with teeth and like the eyes swallowing the top of the temple? That's actually a form, a tantric deity, like a female form of Nishringa called Pratyangira Devi. And she's like an Ugra. Ugra means, you could think like ugly, but it's not really ugly. It's like vicious or wrathful form of a deity. So deities have like Anugra, means like favorable or peaceful forms, and they have Ugra, means like a wrathful or like dangerous form, which tantrics like to employ. They like to approach the dangerous form of the deity because it has radical types of mercy, even if they like uproot the practitioner and put them in a different situation. Yeah, it's cool. That's that thing. The icon there is the Pratyanga. It's like a female form of a lion goddess, and she's like swallowing up the temple.
And so, what's the goal here? Is that she'll have some sort of forgiveness, or what do you say, mercy?
Well, no, so there's Ugra and Anugra Devas. So Deva means a god, but the Deva is not really. It's actually pronounced like the word they, like Theba, like Deva, like a heavy they, and it comes from the Sanskrit verbal or to play. So my teacher would get mad at me if I said they were gods. Like my academic teacher, like they're not gods. shining, playful beings. You guess you have to be free to play, right? Because the gods are free, right? Free to play. And they're also beings of sound. So when you understand a different culture, it's like, well, what is their orientation to God? Is it like, we're using the English words God.
Yeah, is it like a demon? I mean,
yeah, like a spirit. Well, they're like shining sonic beings who live a mantric existence. Like they live in the mantra.
so they're not necessarily evil. Not necessarily
No,
demons.
they're good. They're good.
Okay.
Yeah. Although they do have wrathful forms. Like
Gotcha.
generally the wrathful forms are like for the suppression of evil. I guess
Yeah.
since we brought up Tantra, let's deal with Kali Ma if we can.
I was gonna just also pull up, like, I think the Christians do that too, right? Like their angels, like Gabriel has a sword, like their angels get wrathful. They've got some violent angels. Yeah. But nice. What was the thing you said to bring up?
I'll bring up Kali. Let's because we brought up Tantra.
Yeah.
So like Tantra is like the other. There's like two main streams that are like flowing into like Indian.
Kali gets a bad rap.
Yeah, I'll explain it right here as I've heard it from a tantric scholar. So Kali, first of all, she should be black. Like
okay,
like deep black, black, but that's fine. I
can find black Kali. They definitely have it.
Let me find like a Bengali Kali. Like, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay, so how to explain? She's a tantric deity, right? And so I guess we have to explain Tantra. So the Tantra is actually very similar to like the first half of the Veda. It's like life affirming in that. So Tantra means to weave, and you're weaving together matter and spirit into a non-duality. The word, like I said, means to weave. And so they basically have a non-dual philosophy where matter is spirit. It just, we call it matter due to convention, but everything is spirit. So it's like, as my teacher described, Dr. Sharma said that in Tantra, matter is the radical immanence of spirit, right? So it's very like nature affirming, life affirming. So she's a tantric deity. So people who are worshiping or worship her with a sense of non-duality, right? Now, when it comes to the heads around the garland of skulls or heads represents knowledge or materialistic knowledge. And there should be 50 of them for the 50 letters of Sanskrit, right? So she's saying, sacrifice your mundane knowledge to me, right? Seek higher knowledge, right? Now you have her arms, her severed arms around her waist. This iconography means sacrifice your karma to me, your actions, right? Whatever you do, sacrifice whatever you think you are the doer. So sacrifice the concept that you think you are the knower. Sacrifice the concept that you think you are the doer. Now you see that large head that she's holding? That represents what's called a hankara, or like the ego, like the sense of agency, like I am the doer, like I am the one, I'm so great, I've done this, I have done that, I have a degree, I am rich, I am even stupid, like I'm, like I'm poor, or like like anything that we're holding on to in terms of conception or misconception. And then the sword that like scimitar, sickle looking thing is like representative of knowledge. So true knowledge, like spiritual knowledge, will sever our ego, it will sever our materialistic action, it will sever our materialistic knowledge, right? And then she's often depicted with so many other weapons, right? But the classic, that one, stick to that one. Is it? No, let's go to a different one. There's one where she's holding her hand up like this. This is the traditional is that she's holding her hand up like this, and this means have no fear, right? Like I bless you, you're under my protection, right? And the other one, the hand should be downward, and that means varada. Yeah, this one. There you go. You found it. Means ask and receive blessing. Like you can ask me for things. It's okay. Ask me for things. I'll fulfill your desire.
Well, let me open. There we go.
There you go. So varada. Varada is this one, and then this is Abhaya Mudra. So mudras are seals. You see people meditating with this. This is Jnana Mudra. It means the seal of knowledge. Here this upraised hand is fear not. Abhaya Mudra means non-fear. The seal of non-fear. Now you see the tongue is sticking out. The tongue is red. The tongue is rajas, means the mode of passion or desire, and the teeth are white. Restraining the tongue, that means sattva gun, means the mode of goodness. So the mode of goodness restrains our passions, right? So, and the mode of goodness, of course, is dharma, right? Our passions are restrained by dharma. And then if you look down, she's standing on Lord Shiva. Now, this is where it becomes a narrative theology. Lord Shiva is her husband, or Pati, and he is the Lord of hosts or ghosts. And he's kind of like your correctional officer who's actually cool. Like, let's say you're on probation, but your correctional officer is whack. You don't want that. You want Shiva. You want like a correctional officer who's going to get you out of trouble. So Lord Shiva dresses, he's actually a form, you could say like he's God, right? But he dresses up like in a fearful form with like snakes and like skulls and at least in his tantric form, and he's wearing like a lion skin and all that. So because Kali was slaughtering all the demons, right? You see this form. So Kali comes out in the Markandeya Purana, which is like an epic text. So there's basically like the demons or like the asura overtake the gods or the devas, and they appeal to the primal gods like Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma, to fix the situation, but they say we can't. So they all get together like Captain Planet, and they produce the Devi, or like the great goddess, the Mahadevi. And at a certain point in the battle, she turns into Kali, and she just slaughters all the demons. So in order to protect all the demons from getting slain, to keep the balance, Lord Shiva throws himself on the path, and because she put her foot on her husband, it's considered like she goes like this. And that's a thing in Indian culture. You'll still see Indian ladies, if they make some mistake, they'll go like this. But she's not like sticking out her tongue in some erotic way, or like she made a mistake. That's why that tongue is out like that. And you'll see like Indian ladies will do that. Like, oops, made a mistake. So people get, they get all kinds of ideas, but they don't really appeal to like the people's actual culture. So he's thrown himself on the path of her to stop the war, essentially. And she is a form which is actually protecting the righteous. I know a lot of people get terrified seeing this form. They just don't have the toolkit to unpackage the iconography. So.
Right. And so also the skulls or the heads around her neck, isn't there something like she's supposed to keep them from hitting the ground or something?
I haven't heard that. I could ask about it. But...
Yeah, I thought there was a thing like she has to keep the heads from hitting the ground from the war, because as soon as the heads hit the ground, like...
Oh, okay. So she did actually, she does drink blood because she's an Ugra Devi, but she drinks the blood of demons. So there's a demon general named Rakta Bija. Rakta means blood and Bija means seed. So his name is like really epic. It's like General Blood Seed, right? And he had this mystical ability. General Blood Seed had a mystical ability to like, if he gets cut and a drop of blood hits the ground, an equal clone of him appears. And so like there's like the world was filling up with like these clones of this like super asura, super demon.
So she had to drink all the blood before a drop hit the ground.
Yeah, so she made her tongue like the size of the world. But in this iconography, her sticking out her tongue isn't that moment. This is her. You would have to draw a picture of her with like her tongue like huge and massive.
She just has a lot of tongue iconography. Okay.
Yeah, she's got some tongue iconography going on. So the dark in Tantra, the dark, like like Krishna is dark or like Vishnu is dark. Dark represents the unfathomable depths. Really, it's like the impenetrable.
Is this kind of a long tongue? What do you think here with the Rolling Stones?
I think they just want some.
Maybe.
But yeah, these are all symbols, right? So I want to say another thing about symbology. Sometimes people are like, okay, this is symbology. Well, consider for a second the power of the symbol as a whole and not just its parts. The symbol as a whole, or like the form of the deity, is actually very unifying in its or holistic in its presentation. So why not can the deities have forms? They can have form, just because, and in a way that is a thing that we can understand as humans. Like,
yeah, well, that's part of the whole, again, with the whole, if this is an all-powerful being, how could they not have the power to have a form? If they have the power to be omnipotent, then how do they have the power to not be to be not omnipotent when they feel like it, or in some capacity? Yeah,
it's like how can the deity not decide to become localized instead of like all pervasive.
Right.
It can be both all pervasive, omnipresent, and localized and imminent at the same time, right?
Right. Well, AI gets into this a lot. Someone was just mentioning, did AI do this? Because, you think about the meta avatar of a god that can have multiple versions of themselves, live their lives, come back at the end, and all of those lives become one memory hub in the Akashic record of this super server. And this does seem like what AI is becoming, very similar to the Vedic it's not quite reincarnations, like meta incarnations, right? Avatars that then live and come back.
That's interesting. Yeah, you would know more about that than me. That's interesting idea of like a super server, like that, in which all things are. Yeah, there's all these forms, right? Like we go in the internet and there's all these images and forms, names and forms, right?
Right.
And then like a
Yeah.
computer programmer understands actually there's all this code, right? But the GUI is also real, right? Like that's what most people interact with, actually.
Yeah.
And also I would argue that the form of a god is like something that connects with our heart, and connects to our feelings. And our being is very much tied up in feeling. Being, I mean, you are because you feel. I feel like, cogito ergo sum should have been like, I feel, therefore I am, instead of I think. Therefore I am. Like what is it? Even in conventional speech, it's like, remember Thomas Nagel? It's like he wrote that thing. What is it like to be a bat? What does it feel like to be a bat, right? And then he talked about qualia, like the qualia or the qualities of experience are like irreducible to that being. Like we don't know what it feels like to be a bat, like we go, yeah, and we like, make clicking sounds and we fly around and eat bugs. Nobody knows what that feels like.
Right. But, so that's the difference. People talk about if a god were to feel, this is how you'd have to do it. You'd have to manifest the localization of experience. You'd have to be able to experience all these things in some way or another, whether you're possessing a body or you get to have your own for a lifetime. I mean, this is not just the Veda. The Christians kind of believe the same thing, this idea that it's valuable, the human experience.
Right. I mean, it's the only experience we know. And I don't think there's anything wrong with interacting with the infinite as in its personal form. Right. So it's kind of like the argument, can the infinity be alive or not? Can it? So like someone asked my guru's guru something like, he challenged, if the finite can know the infinite, then it's not infinite. The finite can never know the infinite. And then he countered, if the infinite cannot reveal itself to the finite, then it's also not infinite. So both are there.
Because it's lacking in the capacity, in a sense, right?
So
yeah, the finite is tied to the infinite.
We get trapped in this like binary thinking a lot,
right?
Like yes or no. When it's already shown, like I see you playing with like guitar pedals and stuff, and you're a musician. I also do that, but like a lot of those things require non-binary logic, fuzzy logic to make those sounds, right?
The best rice cookers use fuzzy logic. It's true.
The best rice cookers use fuzzy logic.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Okay.
Oh man, rice cookers are like $400 or $500 rice cookers. They all have fuzzy logic. That's where that's what the main reason is, because like then they can make your rice better because it can know.
They're sensitive. They got feelings.
Yeah, it can feel when the rice is time rather than just use logic. Yeah, it's fuzzy.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wish we could. I've studied some logic, but I don't really understand. I can't say that. Don't let me fool you. I don't know fuzzy logic, but I know it exists. I know it exists.
Fuzzy logic's the best because when you break logic apart. But when you think about, like, again, I was thinking about the cosmogony of this, because AI is kind of the same thing. Then, that does relate to me. I wonder about how the Vedic version of existence is supposed to have transpired. How do you, especially because these characters like Brahma, you've got kind of a trimurti of characters: creation, existence, destruction. What is Shiva then? You're saying what are these characters really? I mean, it's not the same archetype as Christianity, really, where you have good and evil, right? Is that not exactly correct with the gods?
Yeah, you have more like knowledge and absence of knowledge. You have vidya and you have avidya, right? Vidya means knowledge. Avidya, the prefix always is like the absence or the negation. There's many ways to take it, but simply.
So also there's
absence
so
of
many gods, right? It's like, who are the first, how does this work? Like, who are the real gods of the matter?
Yeah, so I mean, they are the ones that you nourish, right? So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, so people always mistranslate it and they say nourish the gods and the gods will nourish you, and by mutual nourishment you will both thrive. You'll reach the highest good, you'll reach the summum bonum, you know. But it actually says cause the gods to be and they will cause you to be. By mutual causation you shall both attain the highest good.
Wow.
Right.
So what are you manifesting by causing gods to be? Like, what is this?
What are you doing? Well, you're an agent. You're a causative agent.
See, because this is like in Neil Gaiman's Sandman, you know, like the endless, like the creation, putting our energy into the thing makes this thing that lives longer than the people because their kids believe it. So it's kind of immortal in a sense. And it feeds back in because that also leaves an impression on the kids. So there's levels to it. But what do you think you're manifesting? Because it seems more scientific than that. It seems like there's a lot of programming going on to the sounds, what the sounds do, why you use this meter with that prayer.
What am I doing, or what
is the Veda for imprinting, or I mean, because you said manifesting,
cause the gods to be,
cause the gods to be, and the gods will cause you to be.
Yeah, and by parasparam means mutually. So, and this is the antecedent referent is the bhavayantu, causing to be, which most people translate as nourish. Nourish the gods. I don't see why the gods can't benefit from our nourishment.
They're coming into existence because of us, though, right?
Yeah, but something can be, and you can perpetuate it, right? So I don't know if we're causing them to begin, but we could be perpetuating their existence, if you know. So it's I know scientists are going to be like, but like for the fulfillment of your spiritual, and your universal meaning making, certainly I think it is valuable to have some agency within us, and not just that we're like some kind of creature just merely created, some kind of like chattel or like brood mare or something, like we're not just I've heard about like the whole Anunnaki thing where we're like, you guys were created as like a race to be. I don't know if that's what those tablets actually say, but it's been kind of like part of pop culture. I don't think that.
How different is that from the Veda? Like, does the Veda make humans? How are humans made? And
In the beginning, there's a lot of them are like mind born, so they're like Manasaputra. Means they're like sons of the mind. So they're produced from Brahma, the creative function, right? So Brahma is also the deity of karma or action. So there's creation, which is sarga, and then there's like subsequent creation, pratisarga, and then from them like all different, at least the way they've explained it. It's like from up to down, right? So that's not dissimilar from the Hebrew Bible or anything.
So the mind, what is kind of the same as like breathed in, or like how do the humans manifest as in?
So interestingly, when you notice that, that's why I brought up Nasadiya Sukta in the beginning, that kama satad agre in the beginning was that kama, was that desire. So this becomes further explained in what's called the Upanishads. So like the Veda has like two halves. So there's like the Samhita, which is all the mantras, and there's the Brahmana, it's like ritual manuals and some early mythology. And then there's like something called Aranyakas, which is like forest doctrines. Aranya means forest, and then the Upanishads. And most people are familiar with the Upanishads. I mean, they're probably not familiar with them, but when people get into like Indian philosophy, they're like the Upanishads.
I've heard that word. Yeah.
Upanishads. Upa means near or to approach. And Ishad means like to approach and sit near. So you're approaching the thing you're whatever it is your goal is. You're actually approaching the goal in the Upanishad. So the Upanishads are more philosophical. They get a little bit more systematic. The Vedas are very loose, so they're highly open to interpretation. So in the Upanishads, we were talking about causing the gods to be. There's a reason why I'm bringing this up. Kama satad agre. So in the Upanishads, it's clarified that desire. So the one desired to become many, right? He said, "I let me to become many," right? And this is called, and then so desire. So desire is there within the, the one unified person, right? The Purusha, or the supreme personality of Godhead, or the supreme being, right? So desire is actually the first principle. There is no creation without desire. And that's why desire is the seat of the mind in the Veda. So it all comes from desire, and desire is also like root cause of agency, right? Of karma. Because like, why do we have karma? Karma, some people translate it as action. I guess that's probably the most practical way for like people to start.
Yeah. So some people, it was funny. Like someone told me the other day that they said they don't believe in karma, and I thought it was kind of a weird. I didn't have a good line. It's like karma doesn't like, but karma believes in you or something like that. But isn't karma just kind of feels like math or something? Like, it doesn't seem like it's a belief thing. It's just sort of like Isaac Newton believed in karma, right? Action and reaction or something. Like, what is karma?
Well, I mean, certainly there are reactions to our actions. Whether or not they are mystically stored and like received later, I guess we could debate that. At least as far as I've seen in my life, it plays out.
Right.
You see people get their just desserts, right? Or you see people rewarded for their service. Sometimes you don't see, but I don't know. I have a tendency to have faith on that. But karma, I guess, if you want to be like technical about it, karma is part of a phenomenology, which is well described in the yoga texts or Yoga Sutra. So basically, how karma works. So I guess we're getting into like, how do you get out of karma? So how karma works is, at least, I mean, you don't have to believe in this, guys, but like if you want to understand it, like what the theology or the theory of karma is that you do an action, you have an experience. So you do karma, you have an experience, right? That's called anubhuti or anubhav, right? And that creates an impression. Well, this is pretty close, but I'm going to explain it a little bit differently. There's different ways of explaining it. So you do an action, you have an experience creates an impression, or what's called samskara, and the samskara then generates memory. So it's like a preraka, it's an impelling force which is stored in something called chitta, and this would be like the Akashic record. Akash is also a Sanskrit word, just means space. I don't know how this Akashic record became like a new age thing, but essentially there's something called chitta, which is the place where karma is stored. And that is also described as like the heart, or it's kind of like Kant's transcendental apperception, that connects all the things together. So you do an action, you have an experience, it creates an impression or samskara, and the impression becomes the impetus for further action through memory. One begins to have thoughts, right? So impressions cause thoughts, and then the thoughts cause actions, right? And then you do have actions, you have experience. So it keeps going in a loop, right? And then yoga is like intervening in that to create yoga impressions, like impressions of meditation. So like if you like put more and more impressions, like meditative impressions, you'll like achieve the state of meditation which is uninterrupted, where you see the mind is no longer the subject, it's the object. And so when you experience the mind as the object, then you experience the self, right? Because you've mastered the mind.
And this is like a cycle.
Yeah, that's what yoga is. Yoga is essentially intervening in karma. And so a lot of the doctrines in the Upanishads, are like the end part of you could kind of group the Aranyakas and the Upanishads together. Like the second half of the Veda is regarding knowledge, right? And then like the first half of the Veda is regarding action. So all those mantras are meant to be employed in karma, in generating karma. So karma also has another concept.
And imprinted.
Imprinted?
Yeah, so it's like samskara imprint to make you then go back and feel the need to do the
right
samskara, samskara, and repeat.
Right, but there's also a like I saw in that other diagram you brought up called sanchitta karma. So there's different types of karma also. Like you could classify it in this way. There is anicca karma, means karma that is not desired by anybody, anicca. Then there is icha karma, which is like kamya karma, which one does desire. And then there is like for the karma that nobody desires, like hurricanes, like nobody wants a hurricane or an earthquake, right?
Wow.
And then, well, maybe somebody. Earthquake manufacturers might want it.
Come on.
Those labs, come on.
Shout out to the labs.
Shout out. Right? Recognize, respect.
Our boys. Keep going.
They're gonna win. They're gonna win. It's sure causing earthquakes everywhere. Hopefully not in San Francisco. So then what's I'm like sitting right on top of the Hayward Fault.
Oh my God.
I'm like waiting for myself to be like launched 100 feet into the air by like a massive like tectonic shift.
That would be some interesting karma. I feel like you really have to.
It would be exciting. I've seen enough of the boring death in the hospital, like shitting yourself in the bed. That's boring. Launch,
Yeah.
yeah, we need to get
Launch
launched.
me from a volcano.
Yeah. Joe, we'll be Joe versus the volcano, bro. Jump in there, it's gonna shoot us in the ocean.
But wait, so what's Sanchit karma? You said Sanchit is
is
accumulated?
So Sanchita means to pile up. That's
Oh,
the word in Sanskrit means to pile up.
like
So
the
it's
volcano earthquake. I see where you're going with this.
like, well, your Sanchita karma is like collective karma, right? So like everybody's karma becomes like very complex and interconnected, and that's Sanchita karma, right? So there's the karma that comes about from your own desires. There's the karma that nobody wants. There's also karma that comes from other people. Par echa karma. Par echa means para icha, means desired by another. So karma that comes out from other people's desires, and then there's sanchita karma that kind of unites everything. So there's so many interactions that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that what is karma, kim karmiti, what is karma, what is not karma, even the learned have difficulty sorting it out. so it almost just leaves it there. Like if you have a hard time, with karma, you're not alone. It's difficult to understand. It may be.
Is this useful? This map here, it's like Buddhist, but it's talking about creation, humility, connection, any of this stuff. These like Sims
this
game.
Is more like prescriptive.
Yep. Okay.
Prescribing something.
And you're careful about
trying to be more like. Well, I'm all for what I think, telling you what I think is best. But I mean, for the sake of this, I was trying to be more descriptive.
Is this legit?
What is this?
Janavarani.
Anything is legit, and to some extent that it helps us and gives insight.
This is prescriptive, but more generalized. Knowledge covering energy, intuition covering energy, attitude and conduct diluting energy, obstacle creating energy, pain and pleasure product. Is this Gurchi?
I mean, I don't doubt all these things seem reasonable to me. This looks probably more like a Buddhist, but Buddhism is a derivative of Dharma. Of the massive. I guess I'm talking about like the massive Dharma, which includes Buddhism and Hinduism.
But they spend a lot of time studying suffering, so maybe they've got some.
Yeah. So Buddhists are all about suffering because dukkha sutta is the first noble truth, right?
Yeah.
The truth about suffering, right? Existence of suffering. And then so for the Buddhists, they have a problem with desire. So that's why I'm saying desire isn't the. That's actually my master's thesis was on desire. Because desire is problematic for giving rise to karma, right? So therefore, I think the Buddhists, the second they're, if any Buddhists are out there, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm actually not wrong about this, but their second noble truth is called Trishna Satta. Trishna Satta means the truth of thirst. Thirst means, of course, desire here in this sense. Right? So that's how they deal with karma in that way. They deal with desire in that way. So there's very like a strong like anti-desire rhetoric in Buddhism, so like one of the discoveries I found in my thesis is that the Bhagavad Gita is not at all against desire. What it is trying to recommend is that one give up performing sacrifices with desire. One should perform sacrifices out of dharma, out of duty, not out of a desire. So there are, but you're permitted to desire things, and that's even supported. Actually, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "I am desire, karmosmi bharatarshava." I am that desire that is dharma aviruddha, that which is not incompatible or against dharma. So I am
David. Thank you.
I am that base David.
Sending us $2 and a steaming, blowing emoji, which looks like he's the wind, perhaps.
He's the wind.
Yeah. The wind god. I saw this article. Is there anything to this you know of? The Adam and Eve story originated in the Prasanopanishad and the Mundakopanishad.
I'm actually really poor in, even though I have a theology degree, I'm really poor in like interfaith. I think because Hinduism is itself already has so many traditions within it that I already have so much interfaith to deal with that I can't even I haven't gotten to the point. I have every intention of studying, the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible.
Well, I'm curious about like kind of the first humans, or the stories about the first humans and what they were like, you know.
I have heard of this. I just can't confirm or deny. I've heard that there's something called Adama or something, Adam. But sometimes I wonder if some of this stuff is interpolated. Like, there's like cultures meeting and they're like, oh, and Hinduism is very inclusive. It has a sort of a strategy of like submission through inclusion. Like, oh yeah, you're fine. Oh, you worship Jesus. Okay, just add them to the list. We got like 33 million gods. Just throw them on top. Just throw them on the pile. Like you just like, it's like the blob. Like you just get absorbed into it.
Yeah, well, that's the other thought about Hinduism. So, is it really a polytheistic religion, or is it a bunch of different religions that have kind of combined over the thousands of years into a philosophy? Like, are they all from the same original faith, or are they kind of combined together? Like, what is Hinduism versus the Veda?
What's different to different people, right? It's kind of whatever people say it is, isn't it? In a way, like you can't tell somebody like you're not a Hindu. Hinduism even allows you to be an atheist. You could be so like a lot of people are just interested in the one, like the formless. I myself am not very gratified by that, because I feel like my heart will be more fulfilled in like a personal God than like an impersonal cosmos. But I do believe that. I mean, I don't think anybody would deny that there's a cosmos. I mean, you look at the sky; it just looks like it goes on and on.
Oh, so what does that relationship look like? You say like a personal God or a personal relationship?
Like the symbol of the person. Like we are symbols also, but like something to interact with. So I'm not interested in like an infinite suspended animation. I'm more interested in like interaction or like loving exchange or play. I'm more interested in the concept of play, which is why I'm interested in Krishna and everything. But just returning back to like what Hinduism can be, I guess it's kind of free. Like it can be whatever you want it to be. Within, like, I mean, there's so much text, like it's massive. Like there's so much text that you can find something for, what you're interested in. Like you could even worship God through anger. Like you can worship God by hating God. Like it's accepted. It's called, what is it called? Like Rudha Bhakti or something. Like devotion through hatred. Like there was a evil king Kamsa who hated Krishna, and he kept thinking about him constantly. Oh, my angel of death is going to come for me as prophesized. And he sent like tons of demons after him to like bash him. Like he sent the first one he sent was like a witch who like made herself like really hot, and she like smeared like poison on her nipples to like breastfeed him, and then he like
gets him every time.
He like sucked her breast, as a baby, and like sucked the life out of her tit.
Better than the Hercules Disney cartoon. I mean, really, like they could do more with that.
Yeah, so like you can worship God through anger even, and so what ends up happening is eventually Krishna comes and like beats him to death with his fists in an arena in a fight, with wrestlers and everything. And he's like a teenager. He goes there to his uncle's place and he like beats him to death. You could probably like find a picture of like Krishna like throwing a punch like at this king, like dragging this dude like off the throne by his hair, and he's just like,
Which king are you talking about?
Kamsa. Type in Kamsa. Yeah.
Like that. There he is. Look at him. He's like, get out. It's like,
yeah. So like you can work, but so like what's happening?
Everyone else is like, dude, should we stop Krishna? They're like, no. I'm not getting involved with this. But like, really? Like, yeah, they're all.
Yeah. So like, the thing is, how fortunate is he to get to like do fisticuffs with God? That's like a super sport, bro. I mean, so yeah, he got liberation. He gets moksha, which is like liberation. He becomes.
Diana, thank you. We love you. God bless you as well.
Yeah, he gets out of he gets the supreme liberation because he has the touch of the supreme being, even though he did his worship through fighting and hate.
Wait, Rama. This is Shiva doing this, or Rama? Who's this?
This is Kamsa. Kamsa was in his, I think, his previous birth.
Wait. The king is Kamsa, right?
The king's name is Kamsa.
Yeah, but who's the blue one? Is it Shiva or Rama?
Well, that's Krishna.
It's Krishna.
The white one is Balaram.
But isn't Krishna a god? You're saying God's worshiping God by punching God in the face.
Kind of, but no. Kamsa is not God. In his previous life, he was a demon named Kalanemi.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he got some benefit, and he got to fight with the Lord, so to speak.
So who is Krishna? What's Krishna's deal?
Oh, what does he steal?
What? No, what's his deal? That's a good Freudian slip, but yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's like so far to get even to Krishna. Like, so first you have to
Steals the
understand
hearts
that
of many, you know, and the snakes.
Krishna is also whatever in a way you want to approach him as. So he says, "Ye yata mam prapadyate tam stataiva bhajamiham." As they approach me, I reciprocate accordingly. So he's like, Krishna's deal is like he is like expert enjoyer. Like he knows how to have fun, like how to have a good time. So like here is he's playing a trick on his mother. She sees the universe in his mouth.
He eats so much ghee. It's
He eats
amazing.
dirt. He ate dirt. And then his brother like tattled on him. And then his mother's just like, open your mouth. You probably ate dirt. And then like his mother like looks in his mouth and like sees the whole universe and like sees herself looking into his mouth. And,
That ought to show her.
and she like faints and she's like, my son is possessed by a demon. And she like, like does all these like rituals to like purify him, but he's like winking and like making his friends laugh. Like they're all like,
Krishna's the best, isn't he? Isn't he?
Well,
It
he's
should be
trippy.
definitely a show. Yeah.
Yeah, but so anyway, so Krishna is kind of hard to get to because what Krishna is based, like the idea, well, first of all, he's like a hero. The main thing is he's like a heroic figure, a heroic god, Vishnu. He's a form of Vishnu in the Mahabharata, right? So Mahabharata is part of like the epic genre of literature. So first I talked about the Vedic genre. Then there's like epic genre of literature. To get to Krishna, it's like so much philosophy that leads up to that idea. But basically, in the first half of the Veda, you have karma, and karma becomes like action becomes clarified in knowledge, right? And then
Clarified like ghee.
yeah, so like knowledge becomes clarified in devotion. So like devotion is a clarification of knowledge, and knowledge is a clarification of action. So if you do karma well, then the result will be knowledge, right? And if you do knowledge well, the result will be devotion, right? So Krishna is like player. He's like he's in a sport, in a state of sport. So a lot of the theology that surrounds Krishna is based on Kashmiri poetics or like the scriptures which describe how to like conduct a play. Where are you? Can I see your face for a second?
Yeah, sure. I was just thinking.
Yeah,
I
it's
want
a
to.
bit much to get to Krishna. I feel
We
like
can go back a bit. I'm with
so
Christian
heavy.
T-shirt, but we can go back. Christian's
Krishna's trippy. He's basically like God unleashed. Like he's the person without the position. He is pretending not to be the God, and he's like acting like a kind of like a playboy, like, but he's also very righteous. He like does whatever he wants. He's like Tom Bombadil in like in the Hobbit or something. He's something like that,
But is he like Jesus? I mean, so he's kind of like Loki.
They have different. So Christos and Krishna, they do not come from the same. They're not cognates. I think Christos is
Jesus. I like
Jesus. Yeah, no, Christos is I think from anoint. He's the anointed one, or the Messiah, right?
Mm-hmm.
Krishna means the attractive or the beautiful. So it's an aesthetic. It's an aesthetic.
Kind of like Lucifer, the beautiful.
Aesthetic theology, a theology of aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't quite get there, but like basically, if you go like super hardcore, like scholar mode, like beast mode in Indian philosophy, first you study grammar, then you study philosophy. Yeah, eventually you get to rasa, which is poetics. Like grammar is for boys, poetics is for men, right? Or grammar is for girls, and poetics is for ladies, for women.
Yeah, rasa's for gentlemen or for the elite or something.
Yeah, like. You got to be like a fairly hardcore linguistic, like Sanskritist, to really fully appreciate what is available in Krishna. Of course, everybody in India is like interested in Krishna because it's kind of like they see their sons as like when they're naughty, they're like, oh, he's like little Krishna or something. Like, oh, my son was like he stole my comb or something. They're like, he's like little Krishna. It's okay, he's naughty. It's kind of like a way to like see the good in your children's naughty actions. That's because Krishna is naughty. He does things like like he stole the clothes of the cowherd maidens when they were bathing and then was laughing.
There's a lot of the Bible about Jesus cut out. I wouldn't be surprised if naughty Jesus was like part of the right up to the bar mitzvah, I think. And then after 15-year-old Jesus, probably stealing chariots in Alexandria. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully we come across undiscovered text that gives us information into that. I've heard the Nag Hammadi texts are interesting. contain a bunch of like Gnostic texts. I'm just not very knowledgeable about any of that stuff. I wish
I'm just in the defense of Krishna, which again would be a cool bumper sticker.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, "Oh, Krishna's a bully. Like, look, he's clothes, and he's like laughing with his friends in the bushes.
He's like the Lord of Serpents and chaos." Like, yeah, but in a good way.
Like he is like caused a bunch of political intrigue, or that's all actually not quite true. Krishna tried to stop this massive war of the Mahabharata. He like even went as like a menial like messenger to the side of Duryodhan, and
like, look, don't shoot.
Hey, you guys are cousins. Why are you fighting? Because Krishna, you guys are fighting. You guys are cousins. Why are you fighting? And they're like, seize him. And then he just like showed like himself multiplying into like infinite forms and like laughing at them. But like he tried to prevent the war. But, yeah. No, it's interesting. Krishna's really interesting. Like he even accepts curses. Like you can curse him and he'll like bless you. Like no, so like in his previous incarnation, Ram. Are you familiar with Ramayan? I'm sorry. I feel like I feel bad for your listeners. There's so much jargon in this.
I mean, these are good. Like, there's a great cartoon, Sita Sings the Blues, which talks about Rama a bit.
Oh, I heard that's problematic. I haven't seen it, but
it's definitely problematic. But it's kind of
they like kind of abuse Rama in there.
They're asking three Indians who barely remember as kids the Ramayana. Like they kind of vaguely remember what they were told by their parents, and like they're all arguing over what they kind of vaguely remember. The version of it being. But it does kind of have some interesting stuff about Krishna and about Rama really, and how Sita and Rama they're looked at as like an affair essentially socially, according to the movie. And so Rama has to divorce Sita because she did get kidnapped, even though she wasn't in an affair.
She was. No, Sita is Lakshmi. There's no question of affair. She's like
trial by fire,
eternal wife of Vishnu. So now the affair is the drama. So that's what I was saying about the sport. So like understanding how the gods, the devas play. This is all a play. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem that Ram Leela or the pastimes of Lord Ram bring out is that if you follow Dharma, because this whole discussion is about Dharma, essentially. I mean, Hinduism is really Dharma. This discussion about Dharma is that if you follow Dharma to the T, like some problematic things can come out of it. For example, like because his wife was kidnapped, and she spent, a year in the home of somebody else because he was the king. He couldn't neglect his subjects' criticism that his wife had developed an interest in another man. How could she not develop an interest in?
She didn't.
She didn't. She totally doesn't. But Ram, being like the righteous king, he's like, well, I have to do what's best for my citizens. So he like sent her away.
Well, that's just a silly story. I mean, I don't know.
It is.
For my citizens, but the point of it is it's about Dharma, right? Okay.
Yeah, it is a silly story. It's actually very tragic. So the Ramayana is actually a tragedy.
Yeah,
the Mahabharata is also a tragedy. Of course, there's comedy and there's beautiful things, aesthetics in there also. But yeah, it's a tragedy. So like if Dharma is followed to the T, like without being nuanced, you get this. In Krishna, he is willing to bend Dharma here and there to actually achieve real Dharma. So that's why he like break rules and like lie.
So who's the dude she was with? She's not with Hanuman, is she? No. Hanuman helped fight for the king.
Yeah.
King, what's his name?
Ravana. So he was the king of Lanka. So in Sri Lanka, some people still are like interested.
Dude, Ravana's based. Like he could play the sitar with like he could play his guts like the sitar, right?
That's dude, Ravana had 10 heads. He was so knowledgeable that when he died, when he was on his deathbed, Ram told his brother Lakshman, go and learn all of the arts and the science of kingship from him because he was a great ruler and he was very knowledgeable. And it's really funny because he goes there and then he says, so he's actually, so here's something you need to understand about the Indian demons. They're actually really righteous. And sometimes they're like more righteous than the gods, right? They usually follow everything to a T, but they always usually have some fatal flaw like lust or like greed. His thing was that he just loved beautiful women.
So he looks kind of like Cheech and Chong's kind of thing going on.
Yeah. They're always portrayed with like some like super like uber mustache.
Rad mustache. It
is. He's like massive. He's like Salvador Dali, like steroids. But Yeah,
So
so
Bruh
like,
steals somebody's wife, though.
yeah, he steals. He even goes as far as stealing. He actually got a curse for laying his hands on another lady, and she cursed
A
him.
different lady before
Yeah,
Sita?
yeah. See, he has all good qualities, but he has one good quality. That's the thing. You got one. You have
One
if
thing
you,
to control you.
yeah, one thing that'll like ruin everything. So like if you so yeah, like most of the demons in the Indian things are actually like really righteous, but um they usually have some fatal flaw, right? And that creates the tragedy, right?
Who was the one before Sita?
I ought to know. I can't remember. It's been a while.
God, this guy is just always getting into problems. He's like
These
Charlie
stories are very complex. They like extend over multiple lifetimes. So I was saying about how like God accepts curses. Like Krishna accepts curses, or like Ram accepts curses as like a form of worship. So like when Ram was searching out for Sita because she had been kidnapped, he came across like these monkeys, and then he killed. He ended up taking the sides in a political dispute. He took one side, and even though the
Yeah, I
enemy,
feel like Hanuman plays into this, right? Didn't Hanuman help out with Ravana?
yeah, no. So Ram's in the forest. He's looking for Sita. He comes across Hanuman. Hanuman agrees to help him find Sita, but he needs help. He needs help with his king. So Hanuman's like, help my king Sugriva overthrow Balan, who had stolen his kingdom, and then I'll help you find Sita. So let's do this first, and then I'll get all the monkeys on your side, and we'll all go searching the four corners of India for Sita. Right. So then Ram shoots Balan. He kills him, and Balan's son, even though he was a great admirer of Ram, said, I wish I would also kill you because you killed my father. And then Ram actually blessed him. You may kill me. So in his next birth, he kills Krishna at the end.
What?
He becomes a hunter. So it's very interesting. So, like, I don't know.
Who kills Krishna?
A hunter. Like a tribal hunter shoots him in the foot with an arrow at the end of his life. And it's really cool. It's really cool, though, because like you want to kill God.
He's
God's
smiling. He's like, it's okay. I'm Krishna.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he bless you. You hate me so much. It's like, even though so the guy's name was Ungad. So the hunter's name in his previous life was like Ungad. And so like
this is a great painting because the hunter's like bad karma and Krishna's
no,
gotcha.
He was crying unconsolably. So in the so in the Ramayana, he asked for the blessing to kill Ram. Or he's like, no, he didn't even ask for the blessing. He just had the thought in his presence, I should kill you. And then in his mind, Ram said, Tatastu, let it be true. Okay, right. So in his next life, he became his hunter. And at the end of his Krishna's pastime, he allowed him to kill him to, send him back to, Vaikuntha, which is so funny. So Krishna is like at the end of like the whole war and everything, Krishna is like disgusted, with the behavior of men. And he like leaves everybody. He like goes to the forest and he lies down and he looks at the stars. Like he's looking, it says he's like reading the stars, like all coming into alignment, like knowing that his time is the time of his death. And so he like lies down on his back and is like looking at the stars waiting. And then the arrow hits him right then in his foot. And then this Angad comes up and is like crying, oh no, I shot Vishnu in the foot. Like the foot is like the object of worship. So here's something you need to understand about Indians. They're very interesting about the feet because the foot is the lowest part of the body, right? So it's like it's the most inferior. It's like touching the ground. It's like dirty, right? So if you like give respect to someone's feet, if you bow to their feet, it's like you're putting your highest part to their lowest aspect. You're like giving them full respect. So like the fact that he shoots him in the foot is very symbolic. Like, the thing that was the object of his worship, he kills. So he kills his God. Right? But Krishna is so cool that he gets up and embraces the man and consoles it. Like, so he's dying. He gets up, embraces the man and calms him down and gives him all kinds of blessings. So like you can even worship. So that's why when you ask me, what is Hinduism? Like it's very complex because it's basically you can approach in whatever your mood is. You know what I mean? You can be a demon. You can be like a demon saint. You could be like you, and it's kind of like if you read the Mahabharata, it's like an experience machine that you live like 1,000 lives through it. Seeing the Mahabharata is like the grand, like the real backbone of like Indian culture. It's like it's actually the longest poem ever written. It's 100,000 verses.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like if you put the Iliad and the Odyssey together, it's like more. It's like 10 times bigger than that or something.
So what's in the Mahabharata?
Mahabharata is like Bharata is the old name of India, and Maha means the great, but it's really about a fratricidal war. So it's like this intense like meditation on fratricide. It's like super brutal, but it's really righteousness wins at a cost, right?
Aren't there like Vimanas and like isn't it kind of like the ancient aliens talk about the Mahabharata?
Yeah, well, I think Ancient Aliens is secretly like the Krishnas. It is. I'm not joking.
Oh,
It
it's
is.
so good. I like the
It
idea.
is, bro. Like Michael Cramo, that like whole what you call it, hidden history, like all those like weird artifacts that are like found in different strata of rock.
Is he? He's not. Is he?
He is, bro. His name Drew Karma, bro. Drew
Through the
Karma.
Karma.
I told you,
What?
man. I know it's
That's
trippy.
really interesting.
Yeah, people don't know that. Yeah, it's the Hare Krishnas there.
What?
It's
Oh,
trippy.
it's
Ancient
cool.
Aliens is Hare Krishna. but it's not because it's more than just Indian Vedic stuff. But it is the idea that there's more to our history than we know, and the Indians have a piece of it, and maybe we don't know everything about, we don't. I mean, obviously, we don't know everything about ourselves.
So what's the deal with the Hare Krishnas?
What is that?
What's the deal?
That is like a westernized missionary kind of version of Gaudiya Vaishnavism.
I mean, is it chill? Is it good? I mean, like I remember in community college.
It depends on your ability. It depends on your ability. So this came around in the 60s, right? So it's got that 60s flavor, right?
Yeah. I love the colors, and I think everyone
like,
who
look
dresses
at all
like
these
this,
guys. These guys are like all in their 20s, you know? It's like the 60s, right?
But they do a lot less acid or drugs once they join, which I've noticed also.
Well, that was interesting. So like all these like swamis like came from India, and like gave their version like.
They're pretty conservative. They're like a conservative British India. A lot of them. They were not into the drugs as much.
The thing you have, Indians are very conservative. They're not.
It was really interesting, like hippies to join it, because like the hippies, of course, the first thing you're telling them is stop taking drugs and having like radical.
Well, that's one of the things about like because some of these swamis would like come to America and then like hang out with like pretty hippie dreddy mamas and then like fall down. Like the Swami Prabhupada was cool because he like, or they'll get like rich like Rajneesh and like drive a bunch of Rolls Royces. But like Prabhupada was cool because he like went to the U.S. with like $20 and he had like 2 heart attacks on a ship. He was like 70 years old, and then it's like your typical like how people view Indian religion. But like this guy was cool, man. He had like a shaved head. He goes like to Skid Row in New York, and he's like just like talking to like people like in the park, and then like so all these kids start talking to him essentially. Yeah, see, look, this is how
Guru movies were great. I like the Guru.
India really suffers from all the false gurus. It's rare to get a real guru. I just look at Prabhupada's life. He was cool. He turned all these people into like highly religious people. I don't know whether you like that idea or not, but like he was like hanging out with like homeless people, man. Just like in the streets, bro. He's in the streets, so I gotta respect him. Yeah, he's and he was very very actually quite liberal, even though Indians are generally conservative.
Where do you think the movement is now, though? I mean, like, do you think that that Hinduism is becoming kind of cultic, or is it kind of becoming more mainstream? I mean, with Ancient Aliens and everything like that, maybe it's just becoming more part of society.
Right. Yeah. He starts off at like kind of like, well, I have a friend, Michael Gersett, and he is a scholar. He like his PhD in like cults and like New Age movements, and his whole theory is how religions go from being cults to actually becoming like a religion. The thing is, Gaudiya Vaishnavism is not a cult, though. I mean, that thing is based on thousands of years of thinking. So the Hare Krishnas, that thing goes super far back. It's not like an upstart thing. It really starts to take form about 500 years ago when the poetic. So, like I said, like the literati or scholars of like Sanskrit and like Indian texts, their real deal when they get older is like poetry, and then of poetry, obviously like romantic or erotic poetry is like, that's the best, right? Love poetry, right? So the love story is like, supreme, it makes for the best amount of dynamics between characters. Like if you don't have a love story in your story, it's not a good story, really. So there's a whole philosophy that came from Kashmir that is developed out of basically drama theory or dramaturgy, right? And so kind of like this theory of rasa. I guess we can get to rasa, like flavors. Rasa is kind of like taste or flavors. It's more like the French jouissance.
Nectar, it said, yeah.
Yeah, like the flavor of life experience, right? So Krishna is ultimately, he's called Rasaraj. He is the taster of flavors. He's like the expert enjoyer of flavors. So what happens is with the idea of devotion to Krishna, it becomes clarified in a phenomenology of what is it like to experience or taste God. So it's like, what kind of experience do I have when I meet God, or what kind of experience do I cause? I actually don't want to use the word God, but like Krishna. What kind of experience do I experience when I meet Krishna, or what kind of experience do I experience? What do I cause him to experience, right? So in the drama, in the philosophy of drama, it's like, how do you create a good experience in the audience, right? Like where is the flavor coming from? Is it coming from the plot? Is it in the actors, in the actresses? Is it in the hero? Is it in the heroine? Is it in the audience? Is it derived from all the ingredients? Or like what is flavor? So there's like a whole school of Indian philosophy that just deals with phenomenology of drama. And this got developed more and more. And so, because drama, where does drama take place? It takes place in a court, right? Back in the day, like you have to have patrons to have dramas, right? So, the production of drama originally was taking place in the court, but as the scholarship of drama theory, which is called Nataka, or Natya Shastra, the dance, the Shastra of dance, as this developed more and more, it actually moved more into the realm of poetics. So where you have ornaments of meaning, which is called Artha Alankar, and you have ornaments of sound, Shabda Alankar, right? So ornaments of sound, like alliterations, like Deva Siddha Mukta Jukta Bhakta Vrinda Vanditam Papa Tapa Davada Hada Viduka Kanditam. Like you see all this kind of like, or where you have like ornaments of meaning, where like the secret meaning surpasses the primary meaning and astonishment. So it went from drama to poetics, and it went from poetics being ornaments of sound to being ornaments of meaning. So this became very useful for ideas of devotion. And so around 1500s, there was scholars say a saint named Sri Chaitanya, but the devotees say it's Krishna himself, that he was there to taste rasa. And so Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Gauda means from Bengal, means like Calcutta, that like East India area. And but he was like, he's a pundit. His name is Nimai Pandit. He's actually a scholar of logic and grammar. And so he's really a philosopher of language. He's a language philosopher. And but people say he was Krishna who came to taste the mood of Radha, to repent for having left her in the village in the Mahabharata, right? In the pastimes of Krishna. So you're like the next thing. So now, because he left his childhood sweetheart in the village and went off to become a king, he now is in the mood of a lover pining for Krishna. So he's Krishna pining for Krishna, but it uses this amazingly complex psychological, phenomenological apparatus of rasa, to explain these experiences. Like, what does the ecstatic state contain, right? So that's essentially what the Hare Krishnas ultimately are, but very few of them actually ever get to that level of being like Sanskritists, like, purveyors of like literature, but it's not just the Hare Krishnas. This is something that's in all of like Indian scholarship. If you're an Indian scholar, okay, you study grammar, then you study philosophy, you study yoga, you study Vedanta, you study the Vedas, the Upanishads, then you get to like poetry. And some of the best poetry is written about Krishna because he's such an interesting hero. He's like God, but he like is not God, and he like breaks all the rules, and he like does a bunch of so you see, it becomes like it's Krishna is ultimately a hero who has like a lot of interesting possibilities. So
but also the point, the dharma, the path for the Hare Krishna is to try to become
ultimately an attendant of Srimati Radharani, of the female goddess. So that's the esoteric knowledge. It's called Radha Dasyam. It actually moves from the masculine Krishna focus to the female, because she is the best taster of Krishna. She understands, she's the best worshiper in the sense that she knows the science of flavors the best, like how to create a beautiful. So like what you're actually trying to do is enter into meditation in a spiritual body through mantra. Like you create like a spiritual body, and then through that you serve in the pastimes. So yeah, you're doing meditation. It's like salvation before death. Like you create a whole other body and mind and person that's not this. But very few people get to that level. Most people are like, want to chant the name of God and come together and follow some like regulative principles and sing and dance and feast. So yeah, that's what Hare Krishnas look like. They like sing, dance, and feast. But like the literati are like
trying to reach becoming the perfect vessel for the lover of Krishna.
Not even. They don't want to compete with her. So you could have a direct romantic relationship with Krishna, but I think more is gained by attending to the supreme goddess herself. So like resisting Krishna's charms and advances, so to speak, and siding with her. But I know, yeah, it's very esoteric. I mean, I'm just giving. It's probably not appropriate for me to talk about that stuff. There's different levels of tradition. There's different levels of tradition. There's like the exoteric, like what it looks like in society, and then there's the esoteric. There are things which are internal, and then there's things which are hidden. So I probably, I did mention some of the hidden stuff there, but religion is whatever people make of it. So if they're not making like. Religion is not only for the elite. So here's something I would like to just kind of convey, having studied religion in the academia, is that religion is about making meaning, right? So it's like meaning making. We are like creatures of meaning, and we make meaning, and that's like at least it's not unnatural to us, right?
But so you're saying it's a lot to do with Radhika, or who is it?
Srimati Radharani. Radha means affection.
No, the god, the lover of Krishna.
So lover of Krishna comes from the Tantra. Her name is Radha. The word Radha means affection. So Krishna is beautiful or attractive, and she is affection. So this is reality, the beautiful. This is not the Almighty. This is like the private life of God for Hindus. Like what's going on. So like you got like the president, like you got like Biden, right? Such a funny example. But Biden, right? He's like a doddering old man, but he's the president. He's like the most powerful man in the free world, right? He's got his whole cabinet who does everything on his behalf, right? So then you have, he's really a person though. Like he's got a son. His son's got like drug problems, and like, like he's got his own private life, right? So like, what would God be if he doesn't have to do the work? Like God is actually kind of like a work, at least for the theory of rasa. Being God is actually like an imposition. So Dharma itself, it's like rasa theory likes to turn everything upside down on its head. So it's like Dharma itself is an imposition. And then so it like starts overturning all of these like bad qualities and making them good. Lust is good. Greed is good, right? Stealing is good. But it's like stealing God is good. Lusting after God is good. Being greedy for God is good. Like everything gets turned on its head, right? So what would the infinite be like if it is merely a person, an infinite person, but not constrained by the duties of a god? So that's why Krishna's like kind of like God unleashed. That's why I'm interested. I guess this is going more into
what God would do if God could choose to live.
Right, if he's an Ishwara, Parameshwar, if he's a supreme Ishwara, if he can, Ish means desire also. So like what if he can choose his own? If he's an autocrat, if everything he says must happen. Actually, technically, here's an interesting thing that the Gaudiyas in their theology were able to come up to reveal, is that Krishna doesn't have to do the work of being God because he delegates it to one of his potencies. So he's omnipotent, means he doesn't have to do. His potency will do it for him. So he has like a casting director do everything to make his pastimes, his play work, his dramas function nicely when he's like the actor. You know what I mean? He's playing.
Ishvara is kind of like the occupation, or like the rule that has to be
the
played.
Ruler, right? Who lays out the rule, who governs, right?
Wow.
Ishvara is sometimes thought of as Shiva or Vishnu. I mean, the deeper you get into philosophy of Indian philosophy, you realize Vishnu and Shiva are the same person.
So how is that? Why are they not different avatars, or how are they the same?
They're the same Ishvara. Well, in different. So there's this idea of Hari Hara. Hari means actually Hari means thief. So Krishna is the thief because he takes away your material occupation and replaces it. Hari Hara. Hara is also Shiva. So Hari Hara are one. So the idea is though that Hara or Shiva governs the material world, and Hari governs the spiritual. But really, like the deeper you go, you realize they're like the same person. You could say because you could rank it hierarchically in the sense that, because Shiva presides over the material world, that you could make the argument that he's supreme in that way because the material world is all that we know.
But Shiva's not like the destroyer, or what does the destroyer mean in that?
So the destroyer, he's a destroyer. He's more powerful than Brahma. So everybody, like, for lack of a better word, shits on Brahma. like Brahma used to be very powerful. So like
Brahma's grandpa.
Days, well, Brahma is the creative function. He's the source of karma. So he's actually kind of a problem. He's a creator. He's like the highest living entity in the material world, right? Like Shiva is the destroyer. Destruction is more powerful than creation. You can undo creation with destruction.
But you don't see him young that often. You see him old all the time. He's old.
Well, because according to their astrological calculations, I guess for Hindus, like the universe is like 300 something trillion years old.
But doesn't mean he gets old, does he? Or is he old? Is he going to die eventually?
Yeah, he does die, actually. So he's born from the navel of Vishnu. So he's kind of like the generative organ of God. And all like the living beings and their karmas are merged in him. And then he like appropriates or fashions bodies to continue with the next manifestation of creation of the world. Like, so when the world winds up and gets absorbed back into the body of Vishnu, then when he exhales, it comes back out. And then all the karmas start getting activated again. So Brahma is like the creative aspect. And then Shiva is like the destroyer. But destruction isn't powerful. Everything has to be wound up, So it's like there's like an ebb and flow. When Vishnu exhales all of these light, all of the, like we're all like light. This is the system that I'm explaining. There's other ways to explain creation, but I'm just saying like from the Indian system. Shiva is like the bodily luster of the Lord, you could say. And the Lord is never without his bodily. Ishwara is never without his luster. He is himself Ishwara, actually. But he's kind of like the horizon between matter and spirit, where like Vishnu is like always associated with the spirit. Like Shiva is like neither existence nor non-existence, nor neither nor both, right? Right. And he is also like the rectifier of like the fallen, so even though he dresses, with like skulls and snakes and everything, carries a trident, maybe he's like a proto devil. He's actually very auspicious. Actually, the word Shiva means auspicious. So
what about the Armageddon or the apocalypse? I mean, so this is a lot of samsara, a lot of cycles, resets. Is there kind of an ending or like when's the beginning and the ending, or are we going into another cycle, and when does that start?
Oh, in India, there's like cycles upon cycles. There's like kalpas or cycles. There's like yuga. There's cycles within cycles within cycles. So there's like if you look up like Indian time, they like calculate it down like from like the atom. It's actually really interesting. Indian philosophers identified time with matter, actually. So they calculated time from like an atomic perspective, and they gave it like particles, like the smallest division is like.
Most of the stuff's circles, though. I'm not seeing like a timeline. So is it supposed to recycle, or what's the deal with this?
Yeah. So it recycles, right? So like, remember it says in the beginning of the Nasadiya Sukta, that one breathed windlessly, right? So there's some kind of pulse at like the core. So like everything comes into being and then is maintained in the interim state and is annihilated in the end. And then
these years, Zach. Sorry.
Yeah, so like we're in Kali Yuga. It's like been going on the last 5,000 years. The epic literature says that it will go on for another 427,000 years. And then some of the yoga literature says that we're passing out of it into, so like there's disagreements.
Which one is it? Yeah, I mean, so what's the argument there? And then what's the Dvapara Yuga?
It's very technical. But yeah, every time I see like electrical or mental or truth, all I think is there's like got to be some Indian engineers who are like trying to make science and Hinduism work together.
The time is now. It's time for the internet. We get it. Okay.
Right. So the if you want to go like historical textual, Satya Yuga is the age of truth, right? And In Treta Yuga, they do so. In Satya Yuga, everyone does meditation. Meditation is the way to exit from samsara. And then in Treta Yuga, sacrifice is Tretayam Yajatamakai, Dvarpa Paricharya. In the Dwarpa Yuga, the way to exit samsara is through archana or through temple worship. And then in Kali Yuga, the way is through mantra, through chanting. So Kalata Dari Kirtana. It means that the way of salvation in Kali is through chanting names of God. So there's different methods. All of these things are like, it's like trying. I don't feel like it's funny. A lot of people want to make everything work together. I just don't like. I like to keep things separate and funky. Like, a lot of people want to blend all the religions together and come out with like a meta religion or like a perennialism, which is like, it's like a fruit smoothie, right? But I think the trend in theology today, I think universally, is to keep the uniqueness of the traditions alive and use them as lenses, right? Lenses of meaning making. So it's more like a fruit salad instead of like the fruit smoothie, like where you're like blend all the religions into something. That I'm totally sympathetic with the idea to find out what is our backstory to humanity, but there could be many backstories. So I kind of more interested in the variety of backstory than like a single monolithic backstory. I don't know if that helps. It's not very helpful, I guess, for people.
No, it's like, trying to figure out okay, but we got like 15 minutes. Let's try to get beyond rasa. What's the next thing you want to make sure you cover?
I think I covered most of it. So there's if you want to understand Indian literature and philosophy and religion, there's two main currents. There's like the Vedic current, and then there's Tantra, and those are actually very similar. Tantra is usually like teachings of Shiva, like esoteric doctrines and meditation. And then there's, at the end of the Veda or the Upanishads, you have Vedanta. Anta means the end of the Veda, but it also means the conclusion. So the conclusion of Veda is knowledge. Knowledge will set you free, right? In the Puranas, in the oral tradition, which you could say is like folk stories or bardic tales, like if you read, I think you would get any listener who is interested in reading Indian literature. The Puranas are very interesting because you have all the stories and the narratives, and so much of the culture is expressed in there, and it's the abstract is made understandable. And actually, in some ways, I feel it's like superior. Like the narrative literature is more interesting and superior than just like dry abstract thinking. Of course, if you understand the abstract, it's easier to make sense of like all of the mythologies and legends and heroic tales. But I guess I would recommend people start with like heroic stuff, like the Mahabharata or Ramayana. It's a very fascinating and very underrated genre of literature. And then the rasa stuff, I mean, yeah, it's really interesting, but it's kind of like the preserve of like scholarship. Like for example, like you're doing meditation, right? So here's something that might help people. Like yoga is essentially what most people consider to be the most transformative aspect. If you want to get prescriptive here for a second, how do they define meditation in the Yoga Sutra? First, there's eight parts, but I just want to focus on the top three, which is concentration, meditation, and like super consciousness or absorption. So meditation begins by concentration, right? So all of your like lines in your body are just like coming to like one point. Like it's all just, everything in your being is just coming to focus on one point. You're concentrating. So that says dharana, or concentration, is defined as desha bandha chittasya dharana. So dharana is the binding of the mind to a location, right? So you're binding the mind to a location. And then meditation is when the consciousness spreads to that location. So like you have the location in your consciousness. First and foremost, that location in yoga is Ishvara, or the supreme being, right? You can meditate. It says in the Yoga Sutra, you can meditate on anything, but the first object of meditation is God, right? The binding of the mind to location, the spreading of the mind to the location. That's tanata dhyanam. Dhyanam, or meditation, is defined as tatra pratyayika tanata dhyanam. Tatra means there, referring to the previous sutra, means the location you bound your mind to. The spreading of the mind, tatra pratyaya is consciousness, eka, so the one pointed mind is spreading to that location. And then samadhi, or like the final stage of yoga, which is actually the beginning of true practice, even though it has to be achieved. Like practice isn't, you can't just you start off practicing. Oh, this is a whole nother level.
Sorry.
That's really trippy. So we can actually go, that would be like the last thing I would talk about.
I'll pull that up for later.
Yeah, leave that. That's great. That's perfect, actually. The one previous with the Taijasa and all that. So, what is it? Finding the mind of the location, spreading Tana to Dhyana, the mind is spreading to that location. And then Samadhi, or absorption, is Tadev Artha Matra Nirbhasha Swarupa Shunyam Eva Samadhi. Samadhi is defined as, or the super absorption of consciousness into God is defined as Tatra, again, that. Like Tud means that location, or the God. Tud, that means God, right? So that, Ava, only that, Matra, only and only that, Artha, the meaning or the object of meditation, when only and only the object of meditation shines near Bhasham. Nirbhasham means shining. Swarupa Shunya Eva, it's as if the form of self is Shunya, or empty, of its own content. Eva means like, so it's a little bit anti-Buddhist rhetoric there. It's not actual shunyata of the Buddhist, but as if. So it describes the mind as become like a clear crystal, and only the object of meditation shines forth. That is actually, even though in yoga it's samadhi, or this is actually when the real practice starts to like gain momentum. And I know it sounds a bit tough, but if you do more than 12 hours of meditation a day, you'll be more habituated to meditating than not meditating, and you'll be very successful in meditating. Maybe if you guys are old someday, give it a try if you don't think it's a waste of time. Now, the next thing is when you meditate during your awakened state. So if you go back to that one thing where you had like there are 4 states of consciousness, right? The Vaishvanara, the universal person, or the awakened state, right? Then you have the dream state. So if you meditate all day, you'll also meditate in your dreams. And have some experience of that, but and then pragya, you can even meditate if you master that dreaming and meditation and dreaming in the pragya, in the deep sleep state. Even though the mind is inactive, you'll still meditate on the form of Ishvara. And then one can achieve Turiya. One knows the 4th state means Turiya, means that one knows that self who is the same self, who is in the awakened state, the same self who is in the dreaming state, who is that same undivided person in the deep sleep, and who is that same person beyond those 3. So to know thyself means to know thyself as thyself, by thyself. It says in the Bhagavad Gita, Udara Atmanatmanatmanatmasadayat, one should raise up oneself by the self. People usually say raise up the mind by the self, but it really, if you just want to be technical, one should elevate oneself by the self. The self is the greatest friend. The self is the greatest enemy. So there's like another muscle in us that we don't know about, that we don't use, and that is meditation. And if you succeed in meditation, then your practice can really begin, because you're exercising this thing like of controlling the mind. You have to bring the mind to one point to control it. So if you can control the mind, then you experience that you're not the mind, and that's where you start to experience that freedom. And that's where the practice, you can really have like transformative practice when you can actually change your heart. So first you got to conquer the mind, then you can conquer the heart, and then you can know the self. And then you know the self, then you can understand something about the supreme self, or God, the self of the self. So yeah, it's, and then on top of yoga, then rasa. So like if you're a successful yogi and then you're a scholar and then you do, so it just keeps going up. Like how high do you want to go? It's
rasa seems interesting because it seems like if you're trying to build a religion that explains how things work, helps you to the end of a purpose or goal, and then tries to help you develop your existential palette so that you're spiritually and physically and emotionally fulfilling yourself to levels that you couldn't before. This is kind of, elevating. The same thing as people would say Greco-Roman theater elevated people's minds. This is elevating your mind to new levels. The same way AI is supposed to help kids learn new qualities or qualifications or attributes. Rasa is helping you understand the subtleties of aesthetic or asymmetry. I mean, it seems important.
Yeah, so the basics of rasa are this. There's something called the lambana, the support of rasa, and that is the ashraya and the vishaya, means the container and the object in the container, right? The vishaya is the subject. So in this case, the lover and the beloved, right? The lover is the object, the beloved is the abode of that object, right? And then the rasa is the sambandha, or relationship between those. And then that takes different transient forms. So then sometimes one laughs, sometimes one cries, sometimes one is idle, sometimes one tells jokes, right? Sometimes one becomes angry or disgusted with the lover. So these are all these flavors. So like you can, like I said, you can worship God with disgust. It's so funny. It's like atheists could be taken as to be worshiping God through their disgust.
Yeah.
Like there's flavor, in that. There's flavor in disgust. There's flavor in terror, or in fear, or in love, or in what do you call it? Frivolousness. Like there's flavor in all of these things, in all these modes. And then there's like sanchari bhavs, and there's anubhavs. So there's just like all these categories of flavors that heroes and heroines used to have to portray on a stage in a drama. And so it is a useful lens, though, for interpreting the spiritual ecstatic state or experience.
Well, I'll give you a chance to be prescriptive, because like last moment, like if you're going to be prescriptive and tell people, okay, you can probably better some aspect of your life through this, what is the thing you think, is the thing that benefits you the most that you can do, that you could learn from the Veda?
Devotion is superior to salvation and to enjoyment. So, people want to be saved. I think it's fairly easily had if you believe God is merciful and you want to be saved. I mean, people repent, or they confess, or they just ask for it, and I think it's easily granted. Going to heaven, it's like entertainment, or like a paradise, so something pleasing, pleasurable.
Could get boring,
right? And not necessarily boring. It's pleasurable. It's very pleasurable.
But pleasure forever.
The actual thing is devotion, because if you don't want anything from God, but you're only like interested in being a servant. I know it sounds so like people don't like that, but if your only desire is to cause pleasure to your lover, and your lover's only desire is to cause pleasure to you, it's a very good thing.
It's a good relationship.
Yeah, it's very good. And like, it's like asking. It's like you're going into like a party where everything's already available. It's like you don't like salvation. It's good. It's good for you. Now you're free from the matter, and your spirit is light and happy. And it's nice to feel happy and be entertained. But devotion can survive even in hell. Like even if like, so this is the thing about the gopis, like the attendants of Radha. They're even willing to go to hell to make Krishna happy. So it was like devotion can even thrive in hell. Like if Krishna says, "Oh, you should go to hell," it's like, yes, I also think I should go to hell. But most people are like, "No, I don't want to go to hell." It's like, well, why not? What if that is pleasing? But like people don't want something. They're like, people are afraid of losing control, because the world is so dangerous, and we're always getting lied to, even betrayed, and there's a lot of intrigue in our lives, and everyone has suffered so much. So these are like dangerous ideas, But devotion, I would feel, is like if you are like interested in religion, like I would say, if you keep your mind in devotion, I feel like it just kind of accomplishes the other two ends automatically. Like you're already kind of saved, or you're already kind of happy and entertained, if your only entertainment is to and also you're connecting with the whole in that sense. Like you're serving a purpose in the whole, because everybody's looking for purpose. It doesn't mean you need to be like a preacher, or you can be whatever you want, really. I mean, if God is pleased by hatred, then, towards him, I mean, I don't think that God likes it when you're hatred to the other living entities. That's not accepted, but he can take it. So yeah, if you hate God, then direct your.
But yeah, living to your own purpose turns out to be a way to do that, right?
Yeah, it's a bit complex, And another thing is, whatever your tradition may be, try to learn the language of that tradition. Like if you want to be a Christian and you're interested in the thoughts of Christians, you should probably learn Latin or Greek. And, or if you're a Muslim, you should learn Arabic.
Probably useful.
It's not. Yeah, it's totally rewarding. Like, if you like Indian stuff, learn Sanskrit. It's not impossible at all to about a year. It's very rewarding, and you can have access to all kind of genres of literature that you never have access to. And hey, thanks for the opportunity. I would hope this could clear up, because it's such a like monstrosity or colossus.
There's a lot here. I think we're gonna have to do more stuff. I'd like to go over like each one of the things at some point, like cover, in more. But this is a good like round Disneyland kind of, for the first time, for people to get kind of okay, what is Hinduism? I don't think I actually took the time to look into that yet. Kind of video. I think that's a good start.
I mean, I think like a title could have been like the steep learning curve. like
That'll be chapter 2. I think that'll be the way to go.
Yeah.
Do you want to share where people can get content from you yet? Or
I got no grift, bro. You're just my old friend, and
Yeah.
It's pretty hard. It's a tough nut to crack, the Indian thing. So I was like, oh, if I can do my small part,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you around. We'll get
Yeah,
you on
thanks.
Think Tank. We should talk about Indian politics this week after the Turkish election. There's a lot
Oh,
more we
God.
can cover, but I think we did good. We did good avoiding all of that. I appreciate you, man. Let's definitely do another episode soon. Haribo, bro.
Hey, and thanks for the opportunity to do some service. You're awesome, man. I really love your channel. It's very entertaining and insightful.
We'll hang out soon, dude.
Good host.
Peace.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Tartarian. Recent Tartarian.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.